Here's our kayak, rescued from school, back in my shop. To work on it, I'm going to need something a little bit more stable than that plastic table that it's on. So to get started, I'm going to build a cradle, and I'm going to remove the zip ties. Here we go. So here we are, guys. I've got the kayak up on stands. I think this will be solid enough. I've just vacuumed it all out. So next step is I'm going to come back. All these zip ties that were taken out, it's time to fill those. So I'm going to fill the structural seams with some Thixo. I may hit these with a little bit of Thixo, but I don't want to create Thixo icicles inside. The other thing I'm going to do, it looks like we've got some space to make up here. Eventually, the side of this hull probably wants to be about where my finger is. I don't know, I'll have to put a batten on it and we'll get to that. But regardless, we know we got to fill here. So this is all Thixo stuff. Remember, Thixo is the strong stuff. So let's see, what I'll do is on the inside of where I want to fill with Thixo, I don't know if you can see that. How about if I put my arm on? There you go. So see all those little lumps? Those are fairly unsightly. So I think what I'll do is before I add anything wet, I'm going to go in there with a heat gun and a scraper and take all those little lumps out. And then I'm going to come back in. You see that? Yeah. So I'm going to come back in here and I am going to put some masking tape on the inside so that everything that does squeeze through gets stopped by the masking tape, and the masking tape should give it a should at least contain it if nothing else. Let's see if I can get some video of that. Once I got the camera out of my way, I was able to get all those seams down. The seams in the middle of the boat are a little bit too narrow for that big scraper to get in there, so I had to make a new one. I did video that process, so stay tuned for that. Once the scraping has been completed and all the flotsam and jetsam has been cleaned up, it's time to sand. You may ask yourself, how come I'm using a piece of sandpaper and not a hard block like I frequently have you guys do? And the answer to that is I'm not trying to shape anything, where the hard block would be the appropriate tool to use. I'm just trying to smooth out that surface so that my fillet will lay down nice and smooth, and also that it gives the thick dough a little bit of grit to hold on to so that it sticks a lot better. Hey guys, the GoPro battery died. I wasn't sure if it died before I talked about what the next steps as far as preparation is concerned. So I just finished wiping the seam with acetone. So what that does three things. One, it clears off any dust that might be there. The rag is wet and it picks it up. See all that dust that the vacuum left behind? That dust is going to keep the next layer from sticking. It's going to stick to the dust and not the boat. Second thing it does is the acetone wipes clean any grease from your hands, any grease and oil that was on the plywood. Another thing that'll prevent the epoxy from sticking. And the third thing it does is this rag, as you're wiping the seam, it's going to get caught on anything that's not sanded properly. So anything that's sharp or poking through that the scraper and sandpaper missed, the rag would find it. So it's kind of a final look over to make sure the surface is good, it's clean, and it's ready for our fillet. So that's going to be coming up next, after dinner, I think. So I got a new tube of Thixo here. Take the cap off, throw those away later, before I put the new mixing tip on. These come from the factory, not always evenly filled. So what you need to do first is just burp it a little bit, just squeeze. See, there that is, the harder the red. There we go. So just both start just coming out. Otherwise, that would have come out first and it would never cure. That would be a problem. Go. And it's mixed. All right, so it would appear that the footage that I thought was recording was not of me laying down this fillet. This is the next morning. It looks like our fillet requires pretty minimal sanding. I was hoping that the technique video I filmed would film, but I lost it. I'll have to make another one. I decided to fill it on the inside rather than having to go back inside and scrape afterwards. So I know I said I would put the masking tape on the inside. I put the masking tape on the outside. But you can see it acts as a barrier, leaves a fairly decent surface. I just didn't want to have to scrape and sand on the inside of the boat anymore. I was over it. So next step, we're going to flip this thing over and start dealing with the seams.